controlled chaos here. I have an idea for a new type of ships that could be put into No Man's Sky. That would be really interesting. Multi-crewed ship. This would be a multiplayer ship use type thing. I know the Outlaw update, since the recording of this came out not too long ago, and added in solar ships, but this would be a new interesting way of doing ships. It would add in new gameplay mechanics that would be different to No Man's Sky. Let's go ahead and get into it. First off, I want to talk about the size of these ships. These ships would be between the size of a hauler and a frigate in your fleet. Not the freighter, your big ship, but the smaller frigate ships of your fleet. Now, these ships would be found just like any other ship. You'd either buy them from other pilots or you'd find crash ones. So this would add more ships for ship hunting and make more interesting things for ship hunters to find and search for. The way this would work is multiple ways would need to be done. First, the way the players could get into it could be twofold. One, the player could walk around the ship, find the spot that they want, whether it be the pilot position, a gunning position, a scanning position, a mining position, wherever it is, and then click on that spot and put them in the ship. Sort of like the way they do it in the PlanetSide games, PlanetSide 1, PlanetSide 2. When you had a vehicle, one person would click on the piloting area, another person would click on the gunning area, or a seated area if it was a troop transport, and things like that. And then once you're in there, you could actually switch to different empty spots through the UI. Another way that this could be done, it would be a bit harder and would take more resources to do, is players would be able to move around inside the ship. And this would be a lot more interesting because you'd be able to walk around in the ship. And the way you get on the ship is either through a doorway or walkway that would drop down. And this will allow you to walk into the ship, walk around the ship. If you wanted to be the pilot, you'd walk up to the cockpit, click on the pilot seat, land in. If you wanted to be a gunner on a fighter ship, you'd go over to one of the gunning spots, whether it be on the left, the right, the top, the bottom, or the rear, and click on that seating position. And then I want to talk about how these ships would work with space stations and trading outposts and stuff like that. Because they're really big, they wouldn't fit well on the landing pads or in the space stations. So the way this problem could be resolved is they could have docking ports outside of the space station. So you'd pull up to the space station and hit E to interact with it and pull out this docking tube that would connect to your ship. And that's how you board the space stations. The landing pads for the trading outposts and other plant buildings and player bases would be a lot easier. You just take the current landing pads, you scale up the size of the base of it, keeping everything else the same size, such as the terminals and stuff like that, and then put those in new areas of the trading outposts. You maybe like one or two for the trading outposts, and then player bases, they could plop them down how they see fit and connect them to the base how they see fit, just like we have the current landing pads. Now, there'd be multiple different types of ships for this, and there'd be 3 to start with. The first one would be a fighter. You'd have the pilot seat, and they would basically man the forward guns and would control where the ship goes, and then you'd have gunner seats, or maybe even bomber or landmine seat where you could set out landmines behind you that the enemy would run into, and that would add in some new objectives. So you'd have a left gunner, you'd have a right gunner, or a top gunner, and a bottom gunner, a rear gunner, and these different gunning positions where they get just those areas that they can influence, which would be really nice. So the left gunner could only attack things on the left, the right gunner could only attack things on the right, same with the rear gunner, the top, and the bottom. The next ship I want to talk about is the hauler. And the hauler I see working in 2 different ways. The first way is just like in the gunship, you would have multiple positions where people would have a seat to sit in where they would man a mining laser, and they'd just be able to mine things that are on the left of them or the right of them or behind them type situation, and the pilot would man the forward facing guns and pilot through the asteroids. Another interesting way this could be done is you would have the pilot seats manning the forward station and piloting by the asteroids and need to get a little bit closer, so it'd be a lot more maneuvering and taxing on the pilot. But then you'd have a seat for someone that would use a tractor beam or a tow hook that would pull in the asteroid into the ship, and then the two other members would use their multi-tool mining lasers to break apart the asteroid. And so they'd be all active, having different jobs to do and different ways to do things. The next one and final one is the Explorer. As usual, you'd have the pilot seat. They control where you fly to and maneuverability. Then you'd have 3 seats for scanning. And in the space, basically each person would have the ability to scan different planets. So you'd be able to scan planets a lot quicker. Not as quick as if you were in your freighter and scanning from that, but something similar to that. So it'd be quicker than just being in your regular ship scanning, but not as quick as being in your freighter scanning the solar system. Then this ship could fly in low in the atmosphere, skimming the ground, and each of these scanning positions would do it 2 different ways. Either one would be scanning for plants, one would be scanning for minerals, and one would be scanning the wildlife, or they'd each take different sides, just like on the hauler and the fighter, where it's left side, right side, rear, front, so on and so forth. And that's how that would work for that. Now, all this would be really interesting and would cause a lot of communication to happen between the players manning these ships for each of these situations. For the fighters, they need to call out where targets are and let the pilot know how they need to maneuver and things like that. For the hauler, they would need to communicate with the pilot on where to maneuver, that they need to get closer to these set of asteroids, and that they're done mining a certain section on the right or behind them or to the left. Or if they're using the tractor beam or tow hook idea, it basically be the tow hook person would communicate with the pilot, okay, you need to be this close, you need to maneuver this direction or that direction, and then the tow hook would pull it in and then communicate with the 2 members waiting for, okay, it's coming in, watch yourselves type of situation. And then once in, the 2 members doing the mining of the asteroid in the ship would mine that and say, okay, we're 50% done, we're almost done, okay, we're done, we're ready for our new asteroid to come in, and it would cause that kind of thing. Same with the Explorer ship. The Explorer ship would need communications on, okay, you scan this planet, you scan that planet, you know, I can't view this planet because this other planet's in the way. Pilot, could you maneuver a bit differently type of situation? So there'd be a lot of communication going on, either in game or using something like Discord and things like that to do this. So that's my idea on how multi-crew ships could work. What I want to know is, what do you think of this idea, and what ideas would you want to add on to this or change of what I've came up? So comment that all down below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day.